Google killed 79 out of 100 blogs. The median blog site reviewed in recent research lost 85% of its search traffic. Not the worst blog in the list. The middle. Half actually did worse than that. And all of that in less than 4 years. Daniel Stanica researched 100 top blogs and found that between 2022 and 2026, they got slaughtered. Again, the median dropped by 85%. 65 of the 100 saw their overall traffic drop by 50% or more. Another 14 dropped by an average of 36%. Only 21 grew. That's bad. It's also a problem for folks beyond blogs. Any business that's dependent on organic search for its revenue is headed for the same fall. Large publishers have warned us about this issue for years, and it's coming for every single business that depends on search. I'd also argue that AI won't save us, because AI is just another iteration of the same issue. It's a gatekeeper deciding who wins and who loses. This is the Digital Reset Podcast. I'm Tim Peter. Today we're talking about how Google didn't kill blogging, but how they're killing the businesses whose model was built on borrowed brand equity. Let's dive in. Daniel Stanica put together some fascinating research that looks at what's happened to 100 top blogs between 2022 and 2026. And as noted before the break, most of them, 79 of the 100, got crushed. The median blog in Daniel's study lost 85% of its search traffic. And again, 65 of those 100 saw overall traffic fall by 50% or more. And that is all kinds of bad. Now, as Daniel noted in his post, this is a cohort study, not a representative sample. This is a quote. He said, "I am not claiming that 2/3 of all blogs on the internet lost their traffic. I am claiming something narrower and harder to wriggle out of. Of the specific blogs publicly celebrated as the model's biggest winners, 2/3 lost the majority of their traffic." Again, in my view, this story isn't really about blogs or blogging. Give me a minute and I'll get to what it's really about. One of my favorite bits in Daniel's article, though, is where he noted 4 traits among the 21 survivors. He didn't just say, these folks survived. He called out what they're doing well. They are 1, first-hand experience. 2, owned audiences. 3, a real product. And 4, brand search. That's genuinely useful information. And if you've listened to past episodes, it maps directly with advice I've offered in the past. Again, I'll come back to that connection in just a few minutes. What's worth noting here, though, is that this story isn't a ChatGPT stole our traffic story. ChatGPT didn't steal their traffic. Google did. Google gave these folks life and then snatched it away. Let me say this again. AI didn't kill these blogs' traffic. Google did. AI overviews now appear on roughly 48% of all searches on Google. Ahrefs published data in February that showed when AI overviews appear on the search results page, click-throughs drop by roughly 58%. Worse, Google's AI overviews only cites the top pages in search about 38% of the time. That's down half from 76% last year. In short, if your business depends on search engines, you're in deep, deep trouble. And switching, or planning on switching, from dependence on Google to dependence on AI probably won't help you. Why not? Well, first, none are stable platforms for brand growth right now. No single AI holds more than 50% of the market. Second, the rules of the road for each AI platform change almost daily. For instance, Reddit's citation share in ChatGPT fell from roughly 60% to roughly 10% in just 6 weeks. So if you were depending on Reddit volume for helping you show up there, that's just gone. Third, and most importantly, choosing this path means you're just switching from one gatekeeper to another. You don't get access to more customers. You're still letting someone else decide who hears about you and who doesn't. AI isn't the cavalry riding to your rescue. It's just another gatekeeper seeking its chance to own your customers. Yes, you want to show up in AI, and you want to show up in search. They're important signals to your customers that you're a real, honest to goodness, trustworthy, reliable business. They also come with huge hurdles and more than a few strings attached. I also want to be fair to the bloggers and other businesses who've built their businesses using these kinds of tools and tactics this way. I've done it myself. As I talked about last week, these businesses were built by people who followed a highly functional, highly repeatable playbook. You create high quality content, you use search and social shares as low-cost distribution to drive awareness and traffic, you monetize that traffic, and you double down on the kinds of content and distribution channels that work best, mostly search and some social. Nobody did this because they were dumb. They did it because it worked, right up until it didn't. In last week's episode, I explicitly outlined the platform trap and how smart people fall into it all the time. We've seen it when Google updated their algorithms. We've seen it when social media sites collapse reach among your fans and followers. We've seen it when online travel agencies favor paid placements. And most recently, we've seen it with Google AI overviews. Just ask these bloggers. It's the same storyline every time. New platforms are generous early and expensive later. Of course, it's even worse if you're caught in this trap, because you're not just competing with the platforms. You're competing with the folks who didn't get caught. Those 21 blogs that Daniel cited built something sustainable beyond big tech and have an advantage that new entrants or old competitors rebuilding their businesses have to overcome. The winners have earned citations. They've earned their audience. They've earned the right to show up in their customer inboxes. And they've set the bar for what customers expect now and going forward. The core element that ties those 21 survivors together is that they built distinct, memorable, desirable brands. Brand is the one thing that helps you grow beyond Google and the rest of its big tech brethren. In the age of AI, brand isn't everything, it's the only thing. Remember, your brand is the prompt. It's something that bypasses the algorithm and teaches AI assistants and agents which products, services, and experiences your customers prefer without them even asking. Your brand as the prompt means you've beaten Google at its own game by building a brand customers ask for by name. You build that kind of brand by focusing on 3 pillars. Content is king. All that's changed is the kind of content and where it appears. Second, customer experience is queen. The relationship you earn with your customers is what makes you worth asking for by name. And third, data is the crown jewels. Your CRM, your email list, your firsthand knowledge about your customers' cares, concerns, and interests is what lets you connect directly with customers and without asking big tech for permission. I wrote that in Digital Reset. And it's exactly what Daniel Stanica's survivors all demonstrate. First-hand experience that can't be AI summarized is content is king, simply stated using different words. The content that survived came from its creators' own first-hand lived experiences. Only they could create that content because they're the ones who did the thing they blogged about. They cooked the recipe, they designed the outfit, they traveled to the destination, they ran the business. Only real people can share real experiences. Similarly, the way survivors shared their lived experiences represent the customer experience from a content business perspective. They didn't just answer a question, they shared their real world experiences with audiences who wanted to know not just how, but the who knows how. Anyone, including and especially an AI, can produce a top 10 list. That's easy. But a real human being sharing a real human experience is distinctly different and distinctly valuable. An owned audience is data is the crown jewels. Period. The email list, the CRM, and most importantly, the subscriber base who can't wait for your latest post. That's all that is. The 21 survivors built direct connections with customers who valued their experience and expertise. And that connection continues to exist even after any algorithm changes. A brand people search for by name is your brand is the prompt and is beat Google at its own game by building a brand customers ask for by name almost word for word. And of course, having a real product is something anybody who's listened to this show does pretty much every day. By contrast, think of the 79 blogs who lost vast amounts of traffic. I recommended a simple 3-question test in episode 498 that can tell you whether you're in trouble or not. Think about these questions in context with those bloggers, the bloggers who are in trouble. The first question is, what percentage of acquisition ran through channels you don't control? The second is your direct traffic growing or shrinking? And the third is, what is their 90-day alternative when Google changes the rules? Seems pretty likely what those folks would answer, right? And that's the whole point right there. One quick aside, by the way. In the data that Daniel showed, he found that of the 21 winners, 3 grew by an astonishing amount. So much so, in fact, that they skewed the data for everyone else. When you look at all 100, it looks like traffic only fell, and I'm definitely putting air quotes around that, but only fell by 32%. What really happened, though, is that the 3 grew a lot, and the other 97 fell by more than 63%. It's actually worse than that when you take out the 21 winners. The point being, don't let a few people distract you from your problem areas. I see this all the time. As I talked about in episode 497, one business that I've worked with had seen decent amounts of traffic and revenue year on year. In reality, their organic traffic had fallen roughly 20%, and their paid traffic grew by 85%. So, yes, their overall numbers were okay, but their costs were up big time. The composition effect, much like in Daniel's study, was hiding the real story. Their profitability was about to get much worse. Of course, the question, as always, should be, what can you do about this reality? And as I did in episode 500, I'd break it down by where you sit as a company. If you're in the first group we talked about, companies in real trouble today, bleeding revenue or profits, your first job is not fix your SEO. It is to grow your CRM and direct traffic as much as you can. Look for specific opportunities to gain more direct traffic. Look at your analytics and determine the highest cost gatekeeper channel. Does it fail the owned demand test? If so, redirect at least some portion of your budget towards growing your email list or your first-party data about your customers. Also, encourage all site visitors and other contact points with prospects to opt into your email or SMS communications. Give them some incentive, say a special benefit or a one-time discount in exchange for their contact information. For companies whose business isn't shrinking but isn't growing much either, your approach is actually going to be pretty similar. The one big difference is that you're in a position to start thinking about content that no one but you can make. What experience and expertise do you and your team have that sets you apart from anyone else, from everyone else? What can you talk about that your customers want to hear about? Don't think quantity. Focus heavily on quality. A single photo essay or video or podcast or written piece that encourages engagement, sharing, and most importantly, new subscribers is more valuable, much more valuable, than 10 or 20 or 100 automated, mediocre, meh content pieces that no one cares about. If your company is growing and optimizing, if you're in the third category, keep that Reddit citation collapse story in mind. Even strong citations represent rented demand that might not last for long. Your job is a continued focus on building brand equity, growing branded search, gaining more information and insights about your customers, and accumulating positive ratings, reviews, and, yes, additional citations across an array of channels. Those will put you in front of more customers and likely will turn up in the next AI model updates. The best way to offset the risk that any one channel can hurt you is to appear in as many places as you can where your customers spend their time. Daniel mentioned in his post that the problem was, quote, a model that was a single large leveraged bet that Google would be the middleman, sending free clicks indefinitely to publishers in exchange for content. However, since 2023, Google has called the bet, and websites that leveraged this model became a liability rather than an asset. Don't be that guy. Your job is to be a trusted resource customers will turn to whenever you're the right fit for their needs. Your job is to be a brand that customers want to hear from. Your job is to build a brand that customers will ask for by name. The last few episodes we've done here have walked you through precisely how you can do that. Episode 498 showed you the real-world cost when you don't own your customers. Episode 499 helped you identify whether you really own your customers or not. Episode 500 gave you the full roadmap of what to do about it. And episode 501 laid out the historical pattern in detail. Today's episode, well, that's all about what it looks like when folks get it wrong. Daniel Stanica gave us 100 real-world examples without even knowing that they underlined the argument I've been making for years. Don't borrow brand equity. Build your own. In fact, here's what I want you to do right now. Pull your traffic composition by source for the last 12 months and look at how much share each provides. Then ask these two questions. 1. What percentage comes from direct traffic, email and SMS, and branded search? And the second question is that number growing or shrinking? That will tell you whether you're building a relationship that only you can own. Again, don't borrow brand equity. Build your own. Next week, I'm going to talk with a brilliant marketer, Steve Cummins, all about what this means for the folks running marketing teams right now. In the meantime, if you know someone who would benefit from what we've talked about today, do me a favor. Send them a link to this episode. I hope they will appreciate it, and I know that I would. You can find the show notes for today's episode, as well as a full archive of our past episodes, at timpeter.com/podcasts. And if you're ready to go even deeper on building a brand that customers will ask for by name, my book, Digital Reset, Driving Marketing and Customer Acquisition Beyond Big Tech, might be just what you're looking for. You'll find it on Amazon.com and Bookshop.org. And of course, you'll find the links in the show notes. Thanks so much for listening today. I genuinely appreciate all of your support. I would not do this show without you. Until next time, please be well, be safe, and as always, be excellent to each other. I'll see you soon.